The struggle. Brian was older than his two wives combined. Following the final funeral, Marilee, his youngest child, questioned him at home regarding his will. "It's in the safe deposit box, Dad. That's the worst place for it. In this state, they will seal it, execute your estate as though you were intestate. Then when the court grants permission to open the box, we will find your will and have to go through probate again. You don't want that. The money to bury him was beyond your mother's means. All right, I'll relocate it. Would you like to go get it for me? 30 miles separate it. Are you still using the city's banks? Just the container. I should probably acquire one locally. I'll reveal something to you. Return it to the bank after emptying it. You can get both keys from me. Uncle Father, I'm not able to open it. It needs your signature on it. Okay, you may open it, dog niece. You overlooked the fact that I brought you to the bank when you turned 18 and added you as a signatory just for this purpose." After reading Hamlet in high school, she had called her father Uncle Father or Father Uncle numerous times. Brian responded by calling her daughter niece, or rather, dog niece. Since they both loved dogs, it wasn't offensive. Now that I think back, I remember. It was quite some time ago. Not for very long. Just 50% of my life. Life is like that, you know, in octaves. I am aware of your theory. I'll finish it tomorrow, though. Are you certain you can take the chance? Tonight, I might pass out. I'll risk it. To be honest, Brian had no idea exactly what was in the safe deposit box, but he figured it could be useful to go over it with Marilee when she returned a few days later. "I have the stuff in your box, Dad. I discovered an oddity, a particular type of instrument." She took up the pliers, which were highly rusted, and gave them a clang. "Aha, the cutters. My granddad owned them. It was an implement for farming. I had a close relationship with him. It's an heirloom, then. Not precisely, but perhaps it ought to be. You and your brother can argue over it. You are aware that life is unpredictable and chaotic. Without these pliers, you and your brother would not have been conceived." With the pliers wide open, she inquired, "So, is this an obstetric device?" "No, but without them, you wouldn't have been conceived." With a wary expression, Marilee set down the pliers and let out a "Ewa." "It isn't the case. I guess it's time to share the tale. That must be the reason I kept them. Though I'm not totally proud of what I did at the time, I can't say I regret it because I still got Sean and you. Those who could have been damaged by hearing this story or by being hurt while it was happening are no longer with us, cannot be victimized again." It sounds like a confession. It is more of a parable about morals. 2 of the commandments are at issue. You must not be an adulterer. It is forbidden to want the wife of another guy, and the fallout from coveting in any case. Perhaps we ought just hold off till Sean gets here. I'll use my phone as a voice recorder. Then I'll have to be careful of my language. Just speak in everyday terms. We've heard it before, Sean and I. In his 90s, Brian often struggled to find kind words, so he was relieved. "All right, so let's start from the beginning. Ellie, your mom, your Aunt Mary, and I were the first of the baby boomers, born in the late 40s, following World War II. Your mom and aunt were raised in a wealthy and protective environment, shielded from unpleasantness, and everything in their lives went well. Basically, everything went well. What was missing was your grandfather, who was about 15 years older than your grandmother. He was there, loved them, and provided for them, but he was distant, a combat veteran who had reportedly gone through horrific experiences as an army scout in Europe. These days, I think we would call him PTSD. He wasn't violent or frightening. Rather, he was just reserved and insular, and never spoke to his children. As for your grandmother, she was a devout woman. She wasn't a bad mother either, but she was more concerned with her understanding of God's will than the emotional health of her daughters. She used guilt, duty, and God's will to control them. So, as happens a lot when parents are unavailable, the siblings grow very close to one another, protective of each other's needs and wants. And then your aunt went to live in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood of San Francisco for a summer, where she was exposed to ideas much outside the boundaries of her sheltered upbringing, and returned home with the conviction that she didn't have to live a traditional life. Marilee said, "What's wrong with that? In between, you can put your life on autopilot and not worry too much about things because there are thorns, nettles, rabbit holes, and vipers off the path. You can live an unconventional life, but you need to have knowledge of life, and especially men, if you are a woman. Or you need to be surrounded by people who protect you from the consequences of recklessly being unconventional. Nothing at all. Living a conventional life protects you from some of life's outrages. It's like staying on a well-trodden path. Are you a wide child, Auntie?" No, she was very traditional. It was only that she might be coerced into accepting beliefs that someone with a stronger sense of convention would find dubious. Let's go back to my childhood. My father left us before I was born. I don't even know his last name. My grandparents and a single mother raised me. I spent a lot of time alone. After I got my bicycle, I had a lot of freedom. I got into fights, got talked into stupid ideas, got things taken from me, committed petty theft, kissed some girls and got slapped by some. I got a bloody nose. When I was in high school, I broke another child's jaw when he hit me first. I have street smarts. I can pretty much tell when I am being scammed. However, your aunt and, to a lesser extent, your mother believed that everyone was well-meaning, that everything would work out, and that love conquers all. After Mary and I got married and had 2 babies straight away, your mom moved in to help Mary since she had just turned 18 and wanted to leave the house. It was a happy time for all of us, and your mom and I grew close. Did you ever? No, we weren't close or even inclined in that direction. Ellie was just my favorite sister-in-law. We were content, but your mother desired a family of her own. It makes sense. Subsequently, she encountered Simon. The gentleman, Simon, was a cunning salesman. People admired him. He had a nice manner. He was a funny man. Up until I despised him, I even loved him. Although I've always known that he's a cunning con man, at first I wasn't bothered by it because he didn't appear to be hurting anyone. If not for his fault of character, he would have been fine. He was a narcissistic, self-centered person. He desired the possessions of others. He desired my spouse. He desired my wife, but he already had someone similar, and not sure why. Ellie and Mary were both attractive young women with lively dispositions. I was in love with Mary, but if we had crossed paths when we were still young, I think I would have gone after Ellie, and that would have meant a different resolution for the tale. However, I can see why someone might like Mary. She was rather attractive. I think he believed there would be no cost to him. He would frequently take things from me and return them in worse shape than when he found them. That must be a metaphor. It came to the point where I would just go do whatever needed to be done rather than lending him a tool. However, I didn't mind taking care of them if he wasn't capable of carrying out his male responsibilities because I was doing it for my family, especially Ellie. That must also be a metaphor. He thus persisted for a few years as a little nuisance. Subsequently, they dispersed. Though Mary missed her sibling, I was relieved. We were informed of their difficulties in becoming parents. In an attempt to conceive, Simon cheated on Ellie. Mary somehow thought that by spreading her legs for him, she would exact revenge on him. I was never really able to figure out how she thought. They informed me on a conference call that Mary will give birth to Simon's babies. I was in complete shock. They hung up before I could say anything. My follow-up call went unanswered. I wanted to take the car up to Annapolis to voice my disapproval, but Jillian and Ben wouldn't be home. I decided to swallow it. It was my assumption that they would utilize in vitro fertilization. It is not really significant. Like a diaphragm, the man jacks off into a soft cup, which is then inserted. It works well and is clean, but the old-fashioned method was what they had to do out of love for their family and other such nonsense. They must have been pressed for time, and they intended to carry on in that manner. I felt ill from it. Mary had gone to sleep. They had tricked me. I hadn't got a chance to protest. Final result. The goal was accomplished. Obviously, she was correct. I would overlook her. I would not get rid of her. I couldn't part with my children. They believed they had me well contained. However, there was one thing I was willing to part with, Simon. I also wouldn't be able to forgive him. Grandma was one woman whose love I never questioned. I paid her a visit. That always made me feel better. I went to the barn to see if Grandpa's tools and implements were still there before I left. I needed to find a specific pair of pliers. It was some time before I located them. I made sounds of compliance when Mary told me we were having supper with Simon and Ellie at their apartment on set to clear the air and restore the family love. Hearing this made me queasy. I pretended to be over it and shook hands with Simon on that day. When only I could see it, the person smirked. However, I continued to act in a kind manner even though I could tell they were getting slower. All of them were just settling in for a quiet nap. I gave them drugs, you see. I was still taking muscle relaxants and experiencing a lot of discomfort from my injuries. I never discard anything that could come in handy later. Similar to grandfather. Despite perhaps losing some of their effectiveness, those pills continued to function. I was able to rouse Simon up enough to walk him to the guest bedroom once they were outside. I informed him that he was intoxicated and that he should take the aspirin I was holding out while he was awake. It was one more analgesic tablet. After approximately 30 minutes of leaving him alone, I took off his shorts and pants. I choked him and bound his wrists and feet. Though I didn't think he would wake up, I was not willing to take any chances. I returned to my car and opened the trunk to retrieve those pliers. One of the duties I did during my summers on my grandfather's farm was neutering animals. The pliers' jaws are flat. They do not quite gel together perfectly. I placed the X after snatching his balls. Perhaps that was where he would awaken. It hurts, but not in the same way as getting kicked in the balls. It feels like being pinched with pliers. I allowed him to relax while I untied him and returned the pliers to the car. In case he threw up while sleeping, I turned him onto his stomach to prevent him from losing consciousness. It would have drawn far too much notice. I then covered him with a blanket. I just needed to bide my time. His balls would go numb in roughly 8 hours without blood flow. All I wanted was for him to remain outside until 6 on Sunday morning. When I woke up, Mary was pulling on my arm and spoke to me in a soft, angelic voice. It seemed to her that I had consumed too much alcohol. It was approximately 9 a.m. Simon looked pretty much dead. I put on a front of being hungover and having a headache. One last task remained to be completed. Simon might start to notice that his balls hurt as he woke up. I didn't want him to go to the doctor in a hurry, thinking he had cancer or something. He needed an excuse for the pain in his balls. Simon was discovered by Ellie in the guest bed, and she roused him. He had a gritty appearance. I turned to assist, grinning. I waited for the ideal opportunity to kick him in the balls when his legs were open. He gave a shriek and fell. I didn't want him to end up at the ER with busted balls, so I just kicked him once, and not as hard as I could. I kicked him in the shins again after yelling at him. That guy was sleeping my wife. All I wanted to do was punish him a little more. Mary gripped my shoulder, but Ellie was motionless. I gave in to her lure. Why did you do that? You said you were okay with it. I never said I was okay. I said that I would forgive you. I never said that I wouldn't beat the crap out of Simon. I turned to Simon and roared, and I'm going to do every time I get a chance until this BS is over. Well, there was just bluster. In a fair fight, I could not hope to defeat Simon with my injuries. I was not going to fight fairly. What's got into you? That's not acceptable, Mary said, trying to put on her irate mom voice. The irony almost made me laugh. Him getting into you is not acceptable. I yelled back. I did it for love. So did I. But you agreed. I was blindsided. Too bad you didn't talk to me in advance. I'd have agreed to artificial insemination. They could have had their baby. You could have had your loving family. But it never was about a baby. It was about Simon sleeping you and you sleeping Simon. Mary shook and went white. She said, we have to leave. I shot Simon another glance and screamed, damn straight we do. Stay away from my wife, or next time I'll stomp your balls into hamburger. I was pulled from the house by Mary. The return trip to our home was quiet and tense. You ruined my family. I don't know how I'm going to fix this. You said you were okay. She cried once again when we got home. No, you ruined my family when you conspired against me with that piece of crap who is now my enemy. Your loving family has a rotten black hole of hate in its core. And stop mindlessly repeating that I was okay with it. I'm not okay, and telling me that I am is just pissing me off. That is not going to get you what you want. She had clearly reached the point of white fury when she asked, so, what is it that I want? You want to keep me and slept Simon at the same time. Well, you can do that, but every time you slept him and expect me to forgive you, which I will because I love you, I'm also going to slept him up and expect you to forgive me because you love me. But you are not going to have a happy family. I will escalate. I'll start using weapons. I may go to jail. You will lose me, my income, and the house. There will be no alimony and no child support because I will be in jail. Jillian and Ben will blame you, as they should. It's possible that Simon will be crippled or killed. And when I get out, I will beat the crap out of Simon again. However, if you stop sleeping Simon, I will stop attacking him, and you can sort of get your happy family back. I would accept artificial insemination, or they can get a baby some other way. You can't do that. You have to stop. For the love of family, you have to stop. I'll make you stop. You can't see the symmetry, can you? That makes me sad. It's easy. If you stop, then I'll stop. We can't control each other. All we can do is raise the cost. This isn't over, she exclaimed, locking herself in the bedroom. Have I mentioned Mary's tendency toward stubbornness? I anticipated receiving the icy therapy over the ensuing few weeks. She would then put him to sleep behind my back. Things would get lighter when they felt like they had the upper hand on me. My spouse was lying and cheating. I was being cuckolded by my brother-in-law. I was also in hell. Although I believe that my marriage is doomed, I never intended to be the one to end it. I installed recording devices on the house phone line, of course. My assumptions were verified by the phone taps. Ellie wanted to give things some time to settle down, but Mary and that piece of junk couldn't wait to get going. They scheduled a 2-week tryst. That night, I made sure to attempt to entice Mary to sleep with me. Though I wasn't expecting any, I was hoping for some evidence that she wasn't being honest. She was friendly to me once more after their tryst. I hired a lawyer and went through the typical financial ups and downs. In essence, that means that I gave him a sizable payment in exchange for his promise to answer my calls and, if needed, to free me from custody. They acted as though having babies wasn't on the plan. I forced myself to act content once more. They had another romantic supper planned for the family. I gave Simon a nose punch when he came in. My right arm is all right, but my left arm might be hurt. I replied, did you think I wouldn't know that you've been sleeping, Mary? This is going to happen every time. Next time, I won't pull my punch. Thou shalt not covet. To Mary, I replied, thou shalt not commit adultery. God gave us 2 commandments about that because it is that important. You have no right to do that. Mary yelled at me. He has no right to sleep, my wife, I retorted. We haven't been sleeping together, and now you're lying to me. Don't you know me better than I know myself? Don't you know that I would find out? You are not on the pill, and you wouldn't put out for me during your fertile time, during which you are always horny. If you go back on the pill and we start having our regular bonding, I'll believe you. Until then, Simon gets attacked every time. Maybe he will get permanently injured. I turned to face Ellie. Ellie, you got something to say. Do you want a baby the modern way or a husband beaten into a coma the old-fashioned way? It was your mother who spoke last. This is the end of it. I take back my agreement. I immediately added, and I never gave my consent. Let the tiebreaker be the holy promise we made to God in front of our loved ones. No more bonding between Mary and Simon, Ellie continued. Brian, I swear to include you in this talk if we ever have it again. In that case, I promise to stop hitting Simon. Mary would have none of it. We decided to do this. I immediately yelled back, we did not. I want a baby conceived in love, not hate and anger, Ellie retorted. Simon is not allowed to have sex with you. There's no hate. I retorted, that's correct. And fury as well. Simon is hated by me. Simon will always be hated by me. I will also despise his offspring if you bear them. There will always be conflict, animosity, and antagonism. A great deal of hate. Simon's nose was flattened, so the sisters glared at each other and agreed to take him to the emergency department. I informed my attorney that I could require his assistance. However, it seems that Simon disclosed having experienced an incident. I continued to watch the phone. While Mary and Simon were still hoping to sleep together, Ellie put her foot down and refused. Although our lives and our physical lives went back to somewhat normal, there lingered a hint of resentment. Your mother and Simon had tense social visits. And then there was an intriguing discovery on the phone tap. Simon was lacking motivation, and Ellie was whining about it. In any case, Ellie exclaimed, hell no. Not just no. That's what initially caused everything to go wrong. Not at all. Brian is to blame. Simon is unhappy because he was unable to conceive a child. I pinched Simon's balls when he crossed a line, which made him sad. What he was receiving, he deserved. Out of familial affection, I began to offer to look after Ellie, but I said nothing. Mary would probably get mad about it. It could alert them to the phone tapping. Simon grew to weigh a massive 600 pounds. He was unable to perceive his own Ellie could locate it, but Simon's thighs and stomach were so bloated that she was unable to get near enough. I was thrilled about Simon, but I felt bad for Ellie. Not only had I prevented him from sleeping with my wife, but I also prevented him from having sex. I know he deserved it, but why didn't the moron visit the physician? A straightforward blood test would have revealed the testosterone deficiency. Ellie resumed her conversation regarding a baby. This time, as Simon was no longer able to physically pair, artificial insemination was the recommended method. Naturally, I didn't object. Mary would not sleep or become pregnant. We went to the reproductive clinic, the four of us. It was a heartfelt family gathering, even though Simon didn't appear too excited. Ellie and I waited until Mary and Simon were summoned into the clinic. Lai and I had a rare opportunity to speak without Mary and Simon. So, how did the three of you settle on using artificial insemination? I have no idea why Simon and Mary were so adamant on going the natural route. I never had any problems using the turkey baster. The weight of Simon is the issue. He is unable to gather himself because he has grown so ponderous. That must be tough on your relationship. It goes beyond that. He lacks motivation as well. I'm beginning to lose my patience. I laughed. Well, in the interest of family love, I would be happy to help you out. After giving it some thought, she answered, I'll keep that in mind. Was that what she meant to say? If Mary and Simon hadn't pushed through that barrier, I never would have stated or even imagined it. Simon and Mary emerged after some time. While Mary appeared upset, Simon's attitude was neutral. Mary told us that Simon had no count. Ellie was curious as to what they had to say. For what reason did they even bother to check? When did that occur? They never skip a check to avoid doing a needless action. They mentioned that it occasionally occurs and advised him to wait 3 months to find out if it reappears. I told Mary later that I thought Simon's weight might be a complicating factor. She informed me that the physician had highlighted the possibility of impotence along with unhealthy fat. Although I was relieved that Simon couldn't have slept with my wife, I wasn't relieved that he was in pain. After 3 months, Simon's count remained at 0. When he eventually saw the doctor, the low T was evident right away. Ellie informed us it is possible to address his low testosterone levels. However, he is without working balls. I dived right into the discussion, asking, how could it be? Was he blind to it? Is there a connection to obesity? Yes. According to the doctor, all that fat compressed his balls and stopped the blood flow. Fortunately, though, he is not in need of them. Medication will handle the situation. Simon was hurried when the physician started him on vitamins, though. He began using steroids found in back alleys. His personality changed, but he didn't lose much weight. He would become enraged about anything. He even swung a blow at me. I sidestepped his slow-motion roundhouse with ease. I wasn't going to exploit the chance to beat him up because I was over my hatred against him. At last, he became enraged on the road. He was struck by a truck in a nearby road when he was beating on a woman's car. At the scene, he passed away. Mary and Ellie were inconsolable. Why did Mary feel such strong feelings for him? In my case, I wasn't happy that he was gone, but I was worried that if he regained his libido, he would start bugging Mary once more. You might say, I suppose, that I was relieved to see him go. We moved Ellie in with us. She was made to feel at home. The children adored her. I cherished her. I had a talk with Mary around a year after Ellie moved in with us. Mary, when are we going to extend the family love to Ellie that you extended to Simon? What are you trying to say? Our affection is all for her. I mean physical love between a man and woman, like you and Simon. It's not the same. You're correct. In contrast to that situation, I am include you completely in the discussion. You have some time to think about this. I won't act in secret from you. I'm not telling you lies. I'm not threatening to take your family away from you. I'm not downplaying how you feel. And I'll respect your choice if you disagree. You just want to have slept with her. Sure, I want to go to bed with her. Was it not the same with Simon and you? I'm not going to agree to that. I won't attempt to force my will on you. But I want you to know that there was a reason why I should have slept with Ellie just as much as there was a reason why you wanted to have slept with Simon. And for every excuse you offer to explain why I shouldn't have slept with Ellie, I had an equally good explanation for why you shouldn't have slept with Simon. Simon merely wants something that belonged to me. Ellie is in pain, and at this moment I could console her. I'm not very happy with you right now. Mary, I haven't been happy with you since you slept Simon. After a week, Mary said, I really treated you badly, didn't I? Once more, yes, and I forgive you. I suppose our conversation last week made me see things from your perspective. I worry that you're going to get more attached to Ellie than to me. You fear that I might start to get more intimate with Simon. I understand. I'm happy you mentioned that. Perhaps now the happiness will return. After giving it some thought, she remarked, the happiness is no longer there, is it? It didn't occur to me until you said it. Indeed, since the moment you deceived me. It was such a little thing. It was everything. I'm taking the kids to visit Mom on Friday, she groaned. We're going to return Sunday afternoon. Just you. Indeed, Ellie and you remain here, together. Comfort her. My happiness came back, but not with Mary. Ellie, the person who had not deceived me, and I were the ones involved. The happiness spilled over to Mary and the children. We were all content and at ease. The family was really happy. Looking back, that was kind of ironic. I had his wife now, and Simon had planned to have mine. Mary was the one who was on the outside, and I was afraid that I would be abandoned by the family. Unexpected events occurred. Ellie began to feel unwell. After she had moped all over the place, Mary eventually said, it's morning sickness. That isn't possible. I am not able to conceive. A test has been administered to me. We're getting a test kit anyway. Okay. Mary was not mistaken. Your mother had a pregnancy. It's extraordinary. Perhaps Simon and I might have become pregnant on our own if we had persisted in trying. Ellie, who told you that you couldn't get pregnant? I wondered for a second. The infertility center. They have to have heard. Let's request the records. Why? Because there may be an obvious mistake. Will they be available? More than 5 years had passed. I think they will. The fertility institution took a long time to respond to the request for records. I recalled that my lawyer was still on retainer. We only needed to send one letter to receive the findings. After receiving the results at home, Ellie said, I don't understand it. When I looked, it became clear. Ellie, you were never flawed in any way. Simon's count was low, in contrast. This indicates that there was very little chance of him becoming pregnant. That's so wrong. Did you receive the results straight from the center, Ellie? Did you get any papers that resembled these? Not at all. Simon then mentioned that he picked up the results on his way home, so we decided not to go get them. He informed me that I was unclean. And how long after that did he float the idea of breeding with Mary? About 6 weeks. Are you not seeing? It never had to do with a child. All Simon wanted was Mary. He would also have free rein to sleep with her for the rest of his life because she would never become pregnant. All of this was set up by Simon. That little dog, Mary said, he's a trash. The sisters finally caught on to what I was seeing. For the next 5 minutes, we were abusing Simon. I led the discourse toward the notion that Simon's issues stemmed from karma. Simon and Mary would have been dating for a long time if he had been successful. Mary would have ended up being Simon's legal wife. That would leave Ellie and me out. I would have gotten a divorce from you. Which would you choose if you had to choose between that and Simon losing his balls? Lose his balls. I considered telling people what I had been doing to that day, but ultimately chose to keep it a secret. Not die, but otherwise lose his balls. 2 years after Ellie had Sean, she had you. Of course, you were both mine. With my 2 marriages and my kids, I led a contented life. We both agreed that Sean and you deserved a legal father, so I married your mother and Mary received an amiable divorce. We hosted a celebration the day you received your college degree. Once everyone had left, Ellie, Mary, and I were alone. I asked them to recollect the day I gave Simon the boot in the balls after taking out a very pricey bottle of wine. On that day, did I do the best thing for this family by opposing the plans of Mary and Simon? Mary replied, yeah, you were accurate. Even though I was furious for a while, what you did was for the best. Had you agreed to my intentions, Sean and Marilee would not be with us. There would be no Ellie. However, using violence is never appropriate. And knowing that, would you forgive me if you found out that I was responsible for Simon losing his balls? Mary confirmed right away that she would. And what about you, Ellie? Obviously. However, you were unable to predict that he would become destructive and run into traffic. It's true that I didn't foresee his death, depression, and tremendous weight gain, but I did foresee his lack of libido, sterility, and maybe gaining a few pounds. How could you foresee that? I have to say that my objective was to damage his balls. I just dealt him a passing blow since I lacked a proper angle. I prefer to believe that I was the reason behind him losing his balls, even if I doubt that kicking him did the damage. Mary put down her pen. She disapproved of anyone hoping to damage another person. To my amazement, your mother said, I hope you did. Everything the scumbag got was well deserved. Instead of going with him, I ought to have taken your second wife. Mary concurred, stating it would have been ideal if we had married Brian simultaneously. An infarction would have occurred in Mom. Your grandmother's reaction made me want to spit out some fancy wine. However, it could have been successful. Ellie and Mary had a tight bond. Without feeling envious, they may have had a shared spouse. Perhaps we would have veered toward that, and perhaps Sean and you would never have been born. However, the snake slithered inside our house. That was the closest I had ever come to confessing my action, up until this day. So was it appropriate for me to protest Mary's plan? Was it okay for me to hurt Simon? Respecting the autonomy and rights of others promotes interpersonal harmony. In the end, though, we breed for survival. We breed in order to produce viable, successful children. It does not benefit my children's or my own survival if I let another man sleep with my wife. Sometimes you have to be a little D to survive. My 4 children's lives and very existence confirm that I made the right decision. That's okay with me. I'll hold on to these pliers, Dad, if that's okay. Although I don't believe Sean needs them, I'll lend them to him just in case. Who knows? One day, I hope to relate my own story to my children. My comment, I would never know if this was real or not. The minute she had slept together without his direct consent should have been when she became a non-entity. No divorce, but no money, no bedroom, no discussions, and no privileges. If she tried anything, she would know she would end.